Hello and welcome back to the Championship Lowdown podcast. I am joined as always with Ollie. Welcome back, Ollie.
Hello, everybody.
It's good to be back after a long international break once again, but like as we said, none of that now till March. So straight football, which for some people might be great. For some people like me, it's not. I'd rather just watch international football, to be honest. But we are back, as always, with our preview of the weekend's games upcoming. We'll obviously pick our best 6 games and go through it, and then we'll have a run through at the end for all the other games that are going on this weekend. But if you are not subscribed to the channel, there's quite a large percentage of you who watch the videos but aren't subscribed. So please do subscribe. It means a lot to us. And yeah, we'll get straight into it, Ollie. And unfortunately, we're starting where I really don't want to start. It's with Swansea. So we are away to Bristol City on the early kickoff on the Saturday. And we still remain without a manager. Obviously, we sacked Alan Sheehan on I want to say it was the Tuesday after we lost to Ipswich 4-1, the last game before the break. Obviously thought, great, we sack him just before the international break. We'll get someone in for Bristol City. Happy days. Hasn't gone down like that. We've had 2 managerial appointments seemingly fall through, albeit one, I'm not sure if it's fallen through yet, with Victor Matos. But Kim Hellberg fell through because he decided to go to Middlesbrough instead. So Darren O'Day will take our game as an interim against Bristol City on Saturday. So I don't know how you see this, but I can't say I'm highly optimistic.
Yeah, it's a tough one to call, I think. Would say on paper, Bristol City probably have the upper hand given their league position. But if you look at the form they're in at the moment, they haven't won in 3. Well, they've lost, obviously slapped by Stoke, lost at home to Blackburn, and then picking up a draw against Watford. So they're not in the best of form, but you would think that given the transition that Swansea are in at the moment, Bristol City might fancy going down to Swansea and picking up a result. The one thing you will say is Bristol City are pretty decent when they get into the lead in a game. So Swansea will need to sort of bear that in mind. And if Bristol City do start well, Bristol City might fancy their chances to push on if they do score early. But Swansea, obviously, all depends on any sort of systems they've got in place. Depends on. It's a tough one to call for Swansea. You probably know more about it than I do, mate. But is it going to be a possession v counter style sort of game? I mean, I know Swansea like to hold the ball, even with having not a great end product. What's sort of your view on this one, and how do you feel you'll line up against Bristol City?
Well, see, because Darren O'Day is Sheehan's assistant, who should have gone with him. He shouldn't still be at the club, in my opinion, but he is. And he's the interim. So I'm assuming it's just going to be a lot of what we saw before the break, which is just brilliant because it's exactly what you want. Just sack someone for playing like that. But yeah, I mean, we will play with the ball. I mean, we do tend to, but it's just very dull attacking wise. And Bristol City have proven that they can be dangerous on the attack. And our defence has been a bit of a shambles in recent weeks. So safe to say I'm not exactly high on confidence with everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks, or in 2 months with this football club, really. It's just insane how we've gone this whole 2 weeks. We've still failed to appoint a manager. It seems like all roads lead to Russell Martin at the minute as well, which is very interesting depending on who you ask in this fan base. I believe someone did a poll and it got like 3,000 votes from Swansea fans and said Russell Martin, yes or no, and it was like 50-50, like dead on. And I was like, that sums up exactly how Russell Martin would be at his club. Like, it's just a massive split on whether you like him or not. But it could be him. If it's not, I really struggle to see who it could be because some of our best sources have said he's not going to happen. So I'm really running out of options at this point for who it could be. But yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm confident. Obviously, going to Ashton Gate as well. It will be a sold out away end, I believe, of about 2,600 Swansea fans, which is great. Fair play to anyone going to that. I'm not. But yeah, fair play because it's an absolute mess at the minute. And I can't say anyone going is probably not very optimistic either. But yeah, Bristol City, depends what type of Bristol City you get. We said it to a lot of teams in this league, but it depends what version of them you get. If we get them at any sort of decent level, they should beat us with the situation that we're in at the minute. My also fear is if we win like 2 games on the spin with Darren O'Day, they're just going to give him the job, which would terrify me. But it's
a concern, that one, isn't it?
It's just an overall messy situation with this club at the minute, and I think there just has to be a resolution. At this point, I just want a manager in. I sort of dropped my standards of what I expect now. I just want someone in the building just to get built and moving, because this season's going to be wasted again. It's another year where we had probably our best squad in many years we've had, certainly our highest spend, and just nothing. We're 18th in the league, and we're nowhere near the level that we should be. So hopefully we can see a turnaround, because I'm sick of coming on this podcast and just complaining all the time.
Yeah, I want to see you with a smile on your face again, James, to be honest. The one thing for me, for Bristol City to look at is, obviously, throughout the season, they've sort of prided themselves on soaking up that pressure and then hitting on that counter. Apart from the Stoke game, where they obviously got slapped for 5, they've really been hard to break down. And I think that Swansea are going to come up against it massively this weekend, just because, as we've already talked about, the sheer lack of chances you create coming up against a side who don't get broken down easily. Let's put it that way. You could be really up against it this weekend. I think it's going to be a tough weekend for you. I do fancy Bristol City to come out on top. I'm not even sure you'll score.
It's completely fair. Completely fair. With our chance creation and expected goals, we're bottom in the league on both. So it's completely fair to say we wouldn't score. If there's any team you wouldn't want to back to score a goal, it would be us, with how poor we've been. All of our goals in recent times have just come from brilliant goals. Like Eder at Charlton, great goal. Vipotnik twice at Norwich, 2 brilliant goals. So they've come from very low expected goal chances. Even Ipswich, I believe, was like 0.2, 0.3. It's not even, that's one of our highest ones, and there's still not much. So just not a good situation. I'm hoping we saw it soon, because you just feel like it's so disconnecting from your club when it's just all going wrong and there's just no care, no urgency to fix it. It's just embarrassing. So hopefully we can get this resolved soon and get at least somebody in the building who can turn this around, because otherwise we are staring down the barrel of getting dragged into that relegation battle, and that's not a thought that I want to get into. So we will move on to the next game we have got, which is Coventry versus West Brom, as some people may call Swansea. Bristol City, a bit of a rivalry game, to which I don't agree with, but Coventry and West Brom is sort of a similar story. Obviously locality it's going to be, but obviously Coventry coming to this in the form that they're in, league leaders by 5 points. West Brom, bit of a disappointing season so far, sat 14th in the table, only won 1 game of their last 5, and that was their last one before the break. So West Brom are going to want to hope to build on that form after the break, but it's hard to back anyone, as we've said many, many times so far, Ollie, against this Coventry team.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the slip up at Wrexham, they're back to winning ways again and scoring goals again, and obviously having that broken the 40 goal barrier, we've said, and they're going into what is it the 16th game of the season this weekend, and to have scored 40 goals already this season, which is incredible. You would have thought as well, with those 40 goals, you'd have maybe a striker who would be a standalone on maybe 15, 16 goals, but you put 3 players in there who are banging away, 2 on 10, 1 on 8. There's Thomas Asante with a 10, Hadji Wright on 8, Victor Torp on 6, I think. Crazy return for these players, and they're all chipping in with goals, aren't they? They are an unstoppable force. I don't care what anyone says. They might not have been playing to the standards that they've been playing over the last couple of weeks, but the fact of the matter is they have only lost once all season, and they are at the top of the league, well and truly ahead of anyone else. And West Brom are in for it for me. I think that they don't score goals. They're going to go to Coventry this weekend, who score a lot and don't concede a lot. So it's how would the West Brom go to Coventry this weekend and try and grind out a result? They need to try something different, the West Brom, because what they've done so far is just not working for them. Too inconsistent. They play some exciting football at times, but it's not consistent enough. And the fact of the matter is they don't score enough goals. And you look at the team on paper, they have got a decent side of West Brom, and it's just not clicking at the moment. Certainly not going to click for me this weekend at Coventry. No, I mean, it's just a difficult one to back West Brom, obviously. Coventry begin this run of games now where it's quite a bit of a gauntlet, really. They've just came off a Stoke game, then they go West Brom, Middlesbrough, Charlton and Ipswich. So, it's a pretty difficult run of games. But what really impressed me with Coventry was the bounce back from the loss, because I think it's very easy when you get teams that start really well to then say, they'll be fine, but then they hit one loss and they start to tumble. I mean, as I said, I think a couple of episodes ago, look at Reading when they were top after 12 games, ended up getting relegated. Like, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to go up if you start really well, especially not in this league. But
responded to a pretty disappointing loss away to Wrexham, all things considered, with a 3-1 win at home Sheffield United, then beating Stoke, obviously their big competition for top of the league at the time. It's really impressive, and I think it's a sign of a team that is going to get promoted this year. I'd be very surprised if this wasn't the team lifting the trophy at the end of the year. Because I said, I know it's early, there's still 30 odd games to go, but I just don't see who gets close to them, really. You think of all the teams that you would expect, they're all down, they're all just so far behind.
Mm-hmm.
It would take an absolute monumental collapse from Coventry to be able to climb into that sort of conversations again. But West Brom, not at the level they want to be, obviously. I was quite high on Ryan Mason going into the year, but it's just not really clicking. I'm not necessarily saying it's all on him. I don't think the squad's particularly brilliant either, if you look at it on paper. But for me, it's just, I just can't. Again, I think I say this every week with Coventry since like week 2, week 3. I don't see a world where they lose this game, really.
No, I agree, and it's like we've already touched upon this West Brom side are just so middle of the road with everything they do. It's with the fact of the matter is they've scored 14 goals all season, and that tells you a story. They're low down in the league. 14th in the league for a side that you don't think they've got a decent side. I think they have got a decent side, to be fair. Maybe not as good as the playoff contending sides, to be fair, but I think realistically they've got some pace in that team. They have got players who should be scoring goals, and for some reason it's just not happening. So I think this weekend it's going to be a tough one for them, though. It's like they've got their coming up against Thomas Asante and Haji Wright on absolute fire, scoring goals for fun. It's going to be a real tough game for the back four of West Brom. Phillips is in for it. Taylor's in for it. How do they cope with that firepower of Coventry? And I think this is where the battle won or lost for them, really. It really is a game for them where do they go there and try and grind out a draw? Do they go and play the low block against Coventry and try and come away with a stalemate 0-0 or something like that? I just can't see how anybody stops this Coventry side scoring.
This is what I mean. I think the only way you're going to beat Coventry is if you outscore them, and that seems to be like an impossible task, really. I mean, Wrexham were the only team who've done it, and they still conceded twice in that game. So yeah, I'm just not confident for West Brom. So there's plenty of talent in that team, but I just don't think it can compete at the minute with the new manager and a lot of players who are new to this league. It will take time. That's why people say like they should sack Mason. I don't agree with that. It's too early.
I don't agree with that.
You don't appoint a manager like Ryan Mason to get rid of him within 12 weeks. It's not going right. You've appointed him because you see a long-term vision where he leads you to the Premier League. And I think, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think you've got a better chance with him than you do with a lot of the managers who you could go and get instead. So for me, I would stick with him. But overall,
I'd absolutely agree. I'd absolutely agree with that. One thing to add on that is you look at the clubs who have just sacked their managers or they've parted company with them, and they're still without managers 2-3 weeks down the line. So it's often a case of be careful what you wish for, isn't it? I think that when West Brom have brought Ryan Mason in, they've certainly brought him in as a project, and they've got to stick with that.
100%. But speaking of a team that didn't have a manager going out of the break, but do have a manager, one of I believe the only team to appoint a manager post sacking someone before the break is Norwich. Obviously, Philippe Clement has come in there, former Rangers manager. And it's safe to say there's better places you could think of starting than away at St Andrews, but that is what he's got to deal with as Norwich travel to play Birmingham City. Obviously, Birmingham climbing their way slowly back up the table, sat in 11th at the minute. Still not all too convincing for what we expected. Norwich, however, even less so. 9 points, 23rd in the league. Only worsened by Sheffield Wednesday, who are on -4. So safe to say they're not in a good spot, but if you're Clement, I feel like you would have really wished that the game you have to start your sort of career with in Norwich would be to go to Birmingham.
Yes and no. I mean, the thing is, it's a bit of a pressure off style game for Clement going into his first game. To go there, and it's one of them where he'll be going there, he'll be trying to see what the team can do. Really, he'll be going there, sort of saying, right, this is the 11. These are your bench players, right? Let's go there and see who can actually put a little bit of pride and passion into this Norwich shirt again, and see if we can start pulling some results together and pushing our way back up the league table, because they are in a false position. They are in a false position. On results, they're not. They fully deserve to be down there. But you look at the league, you look at the players they've got in that side, and there's no way they should be down there. It's a similar sort of situation to Sheffield United, really. But But one way or another, it's just not happened for them so far this season. And for me, this is a bit of a pressure off game for Norwich. I think they can go there to Birmingham this weekend, kind of shackles off, no pressure on them, and just try and put in a performance, try and get some systems working, try and get a little bit of football played, and ultimately try and score some goals. How do you see this one going, James? It's an interesting tie for me.
Yeah, I see that. I sort of agree with that. Like, it's pressure off, but at the same time, you want to come in, you want to start with a result, and the chance of that happening away at St Andrews, as we've seen this season, last season in the League One, it's not very likely. So
it's not for everybody winning at St Andrews, mate. It's not for everybody.
But yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I was really high on Norwich going into the year. I think I put them 6th in the league. I really thought with that team, it looked really, really good. I was so convinced, especially when they kept Sargent, I thought, yeah, they'll be fine. And they've just not been that team. And we spoke about, me and Lewis did our most disappointing 11s of the season. If you haven't watched that, go watch it. It's the last video on the channel. But I put Harry Darling in there. And, it definitely works. He's been so off for what we expected. Obviously, as a Swansea fan as well, knowing exactly what Harry Darling is capable of. He's not really hit them levels. I can't see Norwich getting any more than a point out of this game. A point's definitely achievable. Birmingham have been, they don't lose, but they don't win a lot as well. So it's one of them teams who just seems to be in that sort of just about wins or just about draws. So, since they've started that Dukes Birmingham, they've been much, much better, I think.
Yeah.
I think he's been, we knew he'd be a key signing when he came in with his pedigree, but he's been brilliant for them and he's really sort of unlocked that attack a bit.
Yeah, he's been that missing link, hasn't he? I think you're right. He's certainly been something that they've missed, and it's what we alluded to a little bit earlier in the season with Dukes, wasn't it? It's like they looked like they were attacking really well, but they didn't seem to have that gel in the forward front line. But since he's come back in, obviously they had them 2 4-0 wins, and I know they followed it up with a loss at Middlesbrough, but a lot of teams are going to lose to Middlesbrough this season. I wonder if Birmingham maybe sort of found the level there with that one. Sort of pushing on to maybe a playoff spot, but going to the Riverside this season is not going to be an easy one, and obviously that proved a step far for them. But I think going back to the Dukes thing, it's certainly a player who's gone in there and given him another dimension.
Yeah, you look at this Norwich game especially, it's the big opportunity to bounce back after that result of the Riverside. Obviously, you're playing a team in a bit of disarray, just got the new manager in, hasn't had a lot of time. Don't know how long he's actually been in the building, but I can't imagine it's been more than a week to be able to sort this sort of team out ready for this weekend with a whole new system. I'm assuming it's not going to be what they played before under Manning, because they're very different managers, are Clement and Liam Manning. So it's an opportunity for both teams. Norwich can go and cause an upset and have a really good start to the tenure under Clement, or Birmingham can get another big win at home. They're like the 2 4-0s were at home as well. So, they're back at home. They need to keep building on them 4-0s and not let that 2-1 stagnate them again, because we sort of saw that when they hit a bad run of form, it's bad. They had that really bad run after they lost in the Cup to Port Vale. Didn't, just apart from beating Swansea, of course. They didn't do anything for about 10 games. So that's why they are where they are and not in a playoff berth at the minute. So for me, difficult one to call, because Norwich, you just have no idea with the new manager. You don't know what's going to come out of them. But I struggle to see them getting more than a point away at one of the toughest places to go in the entire league.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think for what it's worth, did I cut off then? Sorry. I think for what it's worth, I think Birmingham will probably get the result here, just because Norwich are still in disarray, and I think it is such a tough place to go and get a result, and Birmingham have proved that over the last couple of years. Be interesting to sort of see how the form players of Norwich, if you can call them form players. I think Chris Garden, since he's come back in, has been a real positive for them in such a negative campaign so far. And if they can build around the positivity that he can show, because he's got some real quality, especially with, obviously, like you've already alluded to, keeping hold of Sargent, if they can build around those two and try and get those two playing together along with the rest of the side, they could go there and cause Birmingham a little bit of trouble. But I think for what it's worth, I think Birmingham get the result this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be very surprised if that wasn't the case. But as I said, you don't know what you're going to get with this sort of unknown entity of Norwich. So I guess, as always, we will see on Saturday when the results come in. But we will move on to another game involving a team in the Midlands. We have Leicester back at home, and safe to say it's not a game you want after a sort of run of form, you're playing against Stoke, who obviously will be annoyed losing to Coventry. That was their big opportunity to sort of claw back into that title race. Again, mental thing to say about Stoke before the season. Had I had said that, I think I would have got some interesting comments, to say the least. But obviously Stoke had won 3 games on the spin going into that Coventry game, so they're going to want to regain this form here, and there's not, what better chance to go do it at a team that's only won one of the last 6 games, and that was against the Norwich team that eventually sacked their manager after that loss, which they only just won late on as well. So how do you see this one going, Ollie?
Yeah, I've got to say, I fancy Stoke. I know they lost to Coventry, but they were well in that game. And for a long period of time, like we say, we thought. I think when we did the review, we said it was looking like a 0-0 all day of the week, and it took an absolute worldie of a goal to separate them in the end. But they were well in that game all the way until the end, and I think they're up there on merit, Stoke, and they're currently sat in third, aren't they? Just because Middlesbrough got that result again, so they took second place back off them. I think one thing to say about Leicester is they just don't like playing at home this season. The last time they won at home was August. So the pressure's on here, and Stoke can go there and really throw the cat amongst the pigeons again. And if they do what they can and frustrate and play physically, and they do have quality, like I say, they've lobbed in Sorba Thomas this season, who's been a revelation of a signing for them, to be fair. They're just so hard to break down as well. It's just that the defence and Johansson in goal. It's just we spoke about it so much already. It's going to be a tough game for Leicester. Leicester need the likes of Fatawu to start putting their hands up and scoring some goals and putting a little bit of confidence back in that home form down at the King Power. Because it sounds like a crazy thing to say, because obviously they're not scoring a lot of goals at this is weird. Fox has just ran past my window as we're talking about Leicester. That is really odd. Really weird. Anyway, that caught me well off guard. So there we go. Fatawu's manifesting it. That's what it is. It's so yeah, Leicester this weekend, they need to go home, start playing some actual football and showing the pedigree class that they've got. It's a real strange thing to say, but obviously they're lacking goals. Do you think they're starting to maybe miss the likes of somebody like Vardy there, who was there as that player who was the gel and the key to the engine, who just was so reliable and could just bang in goals every season? They're going to miss that, aren't they? A player of his ilk and his calibre. I think if they'd have had somebody like that there this season, you probably wouldn't be looking at Leicester City down where they are.
I mean, it's always going to be hard to replace probably one of your best ever strikers, for what it is. Obviously, we're not saying he was that level when he left Leicester. Obviously, he's getting on a bit and he's regressed. But at the same time, is he worse than Jordan Ayew? No.
Nah,
would he not start in this Leicester team? He would, if we're being serious. What I will say is that their home form is weird, because they have only lost once at home, but they've only won twice. They've drawn 4 of their home games. So I can see this being a draw, because we always associate Stoke with draws. But it's another opportunity for a team at the top. Obviously, if as Stoke, you're going to have to keep winning and winning and winning, because Borough they're not losing many games. They're now going to have this new manager, and because you're all going to be exciting again after the sort of week of down, even though they won in that week of down when they lost Rob Edwards. And Coventry are Coventry, and with the form out there, and you struggle to back anyone against Coventry. So it's an interesting situation. Leicester obviously on terrible run of form. I think it's safe to say they're not going to be happy with where they're sat. As I said, the Norwich win was still unconvincing. You've scraped by at the very last second against one of the worst teams in the division at the time. So it's not really like, wow, we won a game. It's like, okay.
I think the one thing it has done is it's bought Cifuentes a little bit of time, and obviously the international break came at the right time following that win, and it's something they can certainly build on. The one thing Leicester need to start doing is converting that dominance in games. It's all right having a lot of ball. It's all right having a lot of pressure. It's all right building a lot of pressure. But if you're not putting that ball in the net, you're not going to win games. And this league's unforgiving, as it's proven so far this season. You can't just take it for granted that you're going to come down from the Premier League and just jump back up at that first attempt. Because you look at all 3 clubs this season who have come down from the Premier League, all 3 of them are struggling to find their feet again. And I think it just shows, and it's testament to the competitive nature of the Championship, of how good and how good the league is and how closely matched these teams are, regardless of the amount of money that these teams are coming down from the Premier League with. What my point is going back to the thing I said about the converting and the dominance. It's all right playing this nice, sexy football, but if you're not putting the ball in the net, you're going to get punished. And Leicester need to start doing that.
Yeah. I mean, look, as with Leicester, it's a weird team because they're in that situation with Birmingham, with sort of, Ipswich a couple of weeks ago. They've sort of built on it now. But as you said, it's testament to this league and how much this league has grown, especially financially, how much this league has grown in this sort of era, because it's the first time in how long that by this point in the season that we haven't got one of the relegated teams pulling away. When have we? I would love to go back and see the last time that none of the relegated teams got promoted from this division, because I'd love to know when that actually was, because I can't remember a time in recent times when none of them went back up straight away.
No.
So, as you said, testament to this league and how competitive. I'll look that up. I might have a little tweet on that one because it's interesting. But there could be a real possibility this year. I mean, I still think there probably will be one. If you're looking at like Ipswich, for example, they're finally turning that key and they're kicking on. But yeah, as far as Leicester, they've not been the way they're supposed to be. I think Cifuentes is very lucky to be in a job. Had that Norwich game not ended in the way it did, I feel like you'd be looking at another team without a manager during that international break. I really do. I said he wasn't the right appointment. It doesn't scream Leicester, a team that wants to compete at the top, to me at all. But yeah, for Stoke, it's a big opportunity to really make a statement and say, yeah, we're here. We're going to compete this year. We're going to be a team in this playoffs. And if they win this game, it is another stamp of their sort of authority in their place, that they're going to be a team that competes. And they're not going to be one of these teams that is there at the start and they fall off for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I do fancy him. I've got to admit, I fancy him. And going back and talking about that Leicester home form, and like you said, they don't lose a lot of games at home, but they don't win a lot either. I think that they need to. For me, one of the key players for Leicester to start pulling the strings a little bit more is Winks. If he can start controlling games and actually creating those chances, putting them on plates for these strikers to actually put the ball in the net, it's going to be. He's the type of player that needs to start showing his Premier League experience, his Premier League credentials, and pulling Leicester out of it. I think Stoke this weekend have got a real good foundation to go to Leicester, make it difficult like they do every week, make it difficult for Leicester to score. They don't score many anyway, and maybe get a goal on the break or a set piece or something like that. I fancy a 1-0 Stoke win.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar sort of that. Either that or like a very low scoring draw, I think would be my sort of guess for this one. Moving on to Ipswich versus Wrexham, another sort of big game this week between two very ambitious sides, of course. Wrexham, turning their form around a bit, obviously beating Coventry, the only team this season to do so, and beating Charlton before the international breaks. Very impressive, you have to say. But Ipswich obviously are Ipswich. They've been in a very, very good run of form, coming off the 4-1 pasting of Swansea before the international break, I think it's fair to say. Albeit we did score 2 of their goals for them. But Ollie, you have to say, as much as Wrexham have been building up that form, it's going to be hard to continue it playing against the Ipswich side at the minute.
We spoke briefly before the pod and we're talking about Ipswich and Southampton, and I've just got a feeling at the moment that there's a bit of an ominous feel to Ipswich and Southampton, to be fair. I think more so for Ipswich. Like Jack Clark and Philogene are just obviously screaming quality. There's only 2 points separating these two teams, by the way, which is a real interesting one. I was looking at that earlier before the pod started, and it's a real interesting battle, isn't it? It's obviously Wrexham can go there and surprise, because Wrexham like to stay in games, don't they? They play exciting football, and it could well be attack against attack. I think McKenna's got Ipswich playing like he wants them to be playing now, though, to be fair. I think there's a lot more solidity, they've got a lot more organisation in there. And yeah, for me, they're looking a little bit ominous for Ipswich. I just fancy that Ipswich carry that on. They show they've got a team full of Premier League stars, haven't they? Premier League credentials all over the place. And I think Ipswich carry on that decent run of form here. And I think I wouldn't say they put Wrexham to the sword, because Wrexham are starting to find their feet now, starting to sort of cement themselves as a real championship side. But I think that it's going to be a fairly comfortable Ipswich win for me this weekend.
Yeah, it's hard for me to write off a team that beat Coventry. because they are the only ones to do so, and it seemed like an impossible feat. So I don't know if about like comfortable. I think at home with the form that they're in, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the end result. But I mean, I watched Jack Clark against us. He's brilliant. He really is good. He tore us to pieces all game, give us absolute hell. And this Ipswich team is really good. I think we're fine. I mean, we said it going into the year. It's a brilliant team on paper, and it's finally sort of clicking. Obviously, the 2 of the last 3 games have ended in 4-1 wins. So that says all you need to know about with the state that they're in. And drawing 1-0 to Watford isn't exactly bad with the form that Watford have shown in recent weeks either. As I said for Wrexham, they're obviously coming into this off a big win at Charlton. And I just don't see a world where they can win 2 massive games of this in a row. With the form that Ipswich are in, they're on that sort of charge now that we expect from all the relegated teams to just hit form and go. I think Ipswich have finally said, let's just go and let's win games and let's do it properly, and that's what they're doing. I mean, they're really climbing up that table. Dangerous players all over the pitch. I said Wrexham are no mug, and I think fair play to Phil Parkinson because he was really on that hot seat. Just not a month ago, he was on that hot seat where we spoke about on here how they should probably sack him. I think before the season, I think Elliot on here said, it's not a if, it's a when they sack Phil Parkinson. And fair play, he's really got this team playing, and as I said, all you expected from Wrexham this year was consolidation, and they're going to do that. Obviously, they were never going to be a team in relegation trouble, and they're proving it already. They're climbing up. I believe they're 13th, so they're more or less mid-table, which is perfect, really.
Yeah,
and they're still only 4 points off the playoffs, so you can't even rule them out of that at this stage in the season with how weird this league has been this year. So,
and the thing is as well, if they're setting themselves in good stead going into the sort of January transfer window, we all know that they've got cash to slash. Who knows what could happen with Wrexham? If they're looking at, say, let's for instance, they finished the 2025 in say 10th, 11th, and they've got a real chance of playoffs. They're going to be spending some money in January. You better mark my words on that one. They'll be spending some money for a real push at the Premier League because they've got a chance, especially if they can pull the right signings in. One thing you'll say is Ipswich, they don't seem to like to be attacked. I mean, what team does? I mean, it sounds like a real stupid thing to say, but they don't like to be attacked. And the one thing you will say about Ipswich is they have a tendency to maybe concede a soft goal. That's one thing you will say. And the one thing you'll say about Wrexham, if they're going to stand a chance, is they're going to attack. They've got players like Kiefer Moore, who's obviously showing that he's championship quality. He's banging goals in, scoring all sorts of goals as well. He got a perfect hat-trick the other week. So these are the type of players that you want to be scoring, you want in your team. Especially against an Ipswich side who can be susceptible to a goal. It's an interesting tie for me, this one. I expect a few goals in this one. I'm not sure in terms of result. I think in terms of final result, I do think Ipswich will win. I think there'll be goals in it. It wouldn't surprise me if it's something stupid like 4-2 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with how these two teams are playing, but I'd struggle to go against Ipswich with the form that they're in, having watched them literally just before the last team to be able to watch them with how good they were against us. I would be surprised to see, although they were a bit, as you said, that's why I expect goals, because they were vulnerable defensively. Obviously, we only scored 1, but our attacking play is diabolical. So, I think most teams would have had a decent day against them when we played them. So their attack is good, but they're vulnerable in defence. So I wouldn't be surprised if it ended in a high-scoring game. But finally, I think this is the one that you've all clicked on the video for, obviously. That I actually didn't even realise because my football didn't show me the game. I
forgotten about.
It is the Steel City derby. It is Sheffield Wednesday versus Sheffield United at Hillsborough. Obviously, two teams not having the best of years. This is currently 22nd versus 24th in the league, and Sheffield United pretty much can't get out of the relegation zone even if they win this. But, Ollie, you have to say, for a Sheffield Wednesday team, that season is basically done. It would mean the absolute world to these fans with everything they've been through in the last year if they they bring Sheffield United to Hillsborough on Sunday and they beat their big rivals.
I think arguably on paper, you look at the league, you look at the teams that are in this league, and putting these two teams against each other is arguably the biggest game of the season. Sheffield Wednesday against Sheffield United. The one thing I will say is, obviously, you look at Sheffield Wednesday and they're doomed already. They know their fate. Is this a 6-pointer for Sheffield United?
I wouldn't.
Realistically, I think it is.
Fair to
I
say.
think it really is. I think it's a 6 point of this, and I think Sheffield United need to go there and take this massively seriously. I know that it sounds like a daft thing to say, but Sheffield Wednesday are going to play this weekend with their absolute all. They're going to go out there, passion, fired up, massive crowd at Hillsborough. Oh God, I'd absolutely pay to see a Sheffield Wednesday win here. I'd absolutely pay to see. I'd love to see Sheffield Wednesday come up with a result. I just think that obviously, but they've brought in Liam Cooper as well. You know, a decent signing at this level. I like that. Yeah, I mean, I know Sheffield United have brought in Bamford, so it'd be an interesting sort of lineup if they come up against each other. Probably old mates. Recent history says that Sheffield United have got the upper hand. I'd love to see a Sheffield Wednesday win. I really would.
I think everyone. I think that's what a poll is. Like, who would you rather win? If Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United is like 80% Sheffield Wednesday. I think. So that's an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, look, both as you said, like for Sheffield United, this is their chance to sort of claw back a bit of form. But Sheffield Wednesday just want to spoil that. Any chance of them getting out of this relegation zone. If they can limit them to as little points as possible this season, they'll be buzzing. And for both teams, as you said, pretty much all they have to play for this year. I can't see Sheffield United climbing up into the playoffs. Sheffield Wednesday season is pretty much already done. It would take an absolute miracle for them to climb out of that bottom three. So it's pretty much all they have to play for. And it's, since, you know, it's a big game. It's one of the biggest derbies in the country. And, you know, I think, you know, both fans know exactly what this derby means to them. But I think for Sheffield Wednesday, in a packed out Hillsborough, in the post-Chan Series era, that stadium's going to be absolutely rocking. You know, there's going to be a brilliant atmosphere at Hillsborough on Sunday. And I can really see a world where they win this game. I just feel like, in a way, as much as it's a derby game, it might sound mental to say, but the pressure's sort of off Sheffield Wednesday as far as expectation. No one expects them to win this game. No one expects them to win any game, really, that they play in. So, you know, expectations off, pressure a bit off. Obviously, you know, you still have the derby pressure, which I understand entirely. But I can see them getting a result here, Ollie. It might sound stupid, but with the way Sheffield United are, I really think this is their big opportunity to just make Sheffield United's season even more miserable.
I absolutely agree with it. And what you said, one thing you said there was bang on. There is literally no pressure on Sheffield Wednesday here. No, they're doomed anyway. They've resigned to their fate. They've literally got nothing to play for. They can go to Hillsborough, shackles off, just go out there and enjoy this derby and really, really put Sheffield United to the sword. They're called the Blades. That was a nice little pun, that. Thank you. Yeah, I just think that this weekend, pressure off. Sheffield Wednesday, massive crowd at Hillsborough, like we've said. Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday win for me. I reckon there'll be goals in it as well. I think there'll be goals, quite a few goals to be fair. I just think Sheffield Wednesday play. You could just go and play no pressure, any style of football really, and just go at them because all the pressure's on Sheffield United to get a result and move away. And from the relegation zone, and I just can't see them living up to that pressure. They've not done it so far this season, so why should it start now?
My big thing with Sheffield Wednesday is the players who are at this football club are obviously passionate about this football club because they wouldn't be there if they weren't, because they weren't getting paid for so long. They're more or less voluntarily playing for this football club, and that doesn't happen a lot. You know, there's something about that club that draws them to it. So I think that is another huge thing because, as a Swansea fan, we saw it for many years when we played Cardiff and we won 4 games in a row. We just wanted it more. And that is basically what derbies boil down to, is whoever wants it more will win the game. And I think Sheffield Wednesday will want this more than Sheffield United will. In that packed out stadium, I really do think they might win this game. I'm not afraid to say it at all. I said, would I be surprised if Sheffield United win? No, not at all. They should. They absolutely should, based on every factor. But the Sheffield Wednesday players who obviously really care about this football club, I think they could do it. And I'm going to agree with you. I think that they're going to win this game and cause a massive, massive upset. And I'm sure they're going to absolutely love that if that is the case.
I'm looking forward to sort of 2:00 on Sunday afternoon to see if Sheffield United do lose that game. There's Twitter and social media is going to be a meltdown, isn't it?
It's going to be interesting.
Come on, the Owls, get a result.
Non-biased though. We're non-biased.
Non-biased, that's all. It's for the good of the division.
Fair enough. That's our sort of feature games for the week. We'll now do a little quick run through of the rest of the games. Another local sort of rivalry, if you will, the Lancashire rivalry. I'm not calling it a derby because I don't know how these fans stand with each other. It's Preston and Blackburn on Friday night. Obviously, you know, Preston having a very, very good year, sitting fourth in the league. Blackburn not so much, sat down in 19th. So do you think it is as straightforward as that, Ollie?
No, but I do think Preston will get the result. I think that they've proved how difficult they are to beat this season. I mean, they're fourth in the league. They're not exciting. They don't play nice football. They've got spells in them where they look decent. I mean, the only time that I've had a real good look at them this season is obviously against us, but they went 2-0 up within no time and they looked like sort of insatiable. And then all of a sudden, we just made a couple of changes, nothing major, and turned the game on its head and should have probably won it in the end. So they're there to be played against, and Blackburn have proved sometimes this season that they can win games. You know, they look decent against us. They beat Stoke. There's a team in there. It's just they need to sort of develop that consistency for me. And what better place to do it at Preston under the lights on a Friday night? I don't know. I fancy Preston to get the result, but Blackburn could get some. It depends which Blackburn side turn up.
I will say I agree, but they also lost to us, which is something to say the least this season. Did Blackburn, but I've said with a few teams this year who we've played who are like where they are in the league, and Preston was another one saying, how on earth are they fourth when we played against them? Because they did beat us, fine, but they were not convincing. You know, they scored an absolute screamer with Thierry Small against us, which is the difference in that game.
Yeah, cracking goal.
And a player scoring against us who shouldn't have been playing because he got banned 3 days later, which is always fantastic. But yeah, I think Preston know they have to win to probably stay in the playoffs. Looking at this week with Ipswich, you know, on their tails and having a significantly better goal difference, you think if they lose one of them or Bristol City definitely will win on Saturday afternoon. So one of them will take their spot if they're not careful. So they know they need to keep the pressure up. As you said, they've got very similar form, these two teams. Their form is more or less identical, where they lost 1-3 in a row, and then Blackburn lost and Preston drew. So it's sort of like very similar form. And, you know, for Blackburn, that's a decent run beating Southampton, Leicester and Bristol City. So wouldn't be surprised if Blackburn come out with a result. But these games are always cagey, scrappy affairs. I think like a low-scoring 0-0 or 1-1 for me is the most likely scenario in this one. We will look to our next one, which is Charlton versus Southampton, which was unlucky to miss out. We sort of are bringing this into our feature games, but there were so many good ones this week for a change that we've gone with this one to miss out. But still a very good game. Obviously, Charlton coming off that disappointing loss to Wrexham, but other than that, having a very good year. Southampton, I don't know if it's been confirmed, but I believe at least for this weekend and for the foreseeable, it seems to be that Tonderecker is going to be the manager moving forward. So obviously given the interim the job, which we've seen comes with a lot of risk, but sometimes some reward. But nonetheless, Ollie, what do we think is going to happen in this one?
Charlton could do with a result. I mean, I'm just looking at their next 3 games. They've got Southampton at home, Stoke away, Coventry away. So they could do a win in this one because you're probably not going to get much in the next 2. I can't see it though. I've said last pod. I've said before we came on air about how I'm liking the look of Southampton and Ipswich at the moment, and they're looking ominous for the rest of the division. I see Southampton getting a result here. I see Southampton putting a performance on and backing it up with another win. Charlton could be on a little bit of a slide.
Yeah, I mean, Southampton obviously come into this off 2 very big results, and we've played both of these teams, Swansea have, this season. Southampton we draw, but it was like they created so many chances, could have easily won that game. We're still quite impressed with what I saw, just didn't put their chances away, which just on the day. But Charlton, I was like, how on earth are these where they are? Because they were terrible against us. And again, it's one game, hard to, you can't judge a whole season off one game, but just the way they're set up and just, it's terrible to watch, fair play, which I suppose Nathan Jones sides always are terrible to watch. But they get the job done. But I don't think they will in this one. Obviously, the Valley isn't an easy place to go, but I think Southampton, with the confidence they now have built from their last couple of results, I think they have the better team. I think that's what this will boil down to. And I think that they'll just about nick this one away at the Valley, but I do think it'll be a close one. Derby versus Watford. Obviously, we spoke about Watford earlier in this episode and many times in the last couple of weeks. Results have been okay. They've only lost one of their last 5, but at the same time, they played some really exciting attacking football at times, even in that loss to Coventry. They've created a lot of chances, and as always, an impossible team to predict with how they just turn up and disappear every week. But Derby on an unbelievable run now, 5 games in a row they've won. Are they going to make it 6, Ollie, is the question.
Depending on which Watford turns up, isn't it? Derby are on fire, aren't they? They're winning games they're not expecting to win. And climbing up that league, and they're comfortably the form team in the league at the moment. And I don't know, it's a tough one to call. Like I say, it depends which Watford side turn up, and because they can play some bloody good football in this Watford side. We've seen it so far this season. They've got some decent players in there, like Aaron Kunde, like Loser, decent side. I just fancy you just fancy Derby to keep rumbling on. They seem to have a system of playing at the moment where the targeting set pieces, granted, why wouldn't you? When you've got Morris banging them in from corners nearly every other week. Such a powerful player. I'd fancy Derby to continue this decent run of form and rumble on. Maybe 1-2-0, something like that.
Well, if you look at who they're playing on Tuesday night, then they'll definitely continue it if they win this game, put it that way. It's a very hard game to call because Derby are another weird team where they have this run, but then before that, they didn't win any of the 5 games before. They won 5 in a row. So it's impossible to predict with these two teams. I hate predicting both of these teams. Watford, as you said, it just depends. And I think it says every single year without fail. It just depends what Watford you get. And the last 2 games, they've not been at that level that we saw against like West Brom, Coventry, and Middlesbrough. But if they turn up in the way they did against Coventry or Middlesbrough, they lost that Coventry game, as I said, they could do it here. But I think I'm going to go draw. I just think it'll be a good game. 2 fairly attacking teams that'll go at each other and they'll just cancel each other out, I think will be the case of this one. Next up, we have got, I believe I can get through it. We got Oxford versus Middlesbrough. Another game involving a team without a manager as of recording. Could change before Saturday, I believe. As a Swansea fan, we know all about Kim Hellberg and that whole situation. I believe that is very, very close to being done at Middlesbrough. I wouldn't be surprised if he's already in the building. They just haven't announced it yet. So I doubt he'll take this Saturday, though I believe it will still be their interim, but it's a very good interim manager they have. And Oxford, as always, very hard to gauge where they're at. Obviously not in a good spell at the minute. Only won one of the last 5, and that was against Sheffield Wednesday. It's coming off 2 pretty bad losses, 3-0 at home to Stoke and then 2-1 away at the Hawthorns. So facing a Middlesbrough side who are where they are, Ollie, for me, this is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'd agree. Oxford have just not impressed me at all this season. It's just another obvious thing to say, but they just don't look very good. They just don't. There's no goals in the team. They're conceding goals, and for me, they just keep falling down the league. And it's not getting any easier for them coming up against the Middlesbrough side, who are second in the league. They beat a Birmingham side last week, or a couple of weeks ago, who were expected to go to the Riverside and really ruffle some feathers up there, and they've come away with it without a manager, and they've got the 3 points. So fair play to this Middlesbrough side. They're well up there on merit, and we discussed it on the previous pod where it's not very often a team in second in the Championship that their job comes available, and this one has. So keep a real eye on this Middlesbrough side. They've got, they're looking pretty exciting.
I mean, as far as Kim Hellberg goes, we've spoken about him a lot as Swansea fans in the last week, and they got a very exciting young manager there. And I said before, I don't think it was Rob Edwards as to why this Borough side was where it was, and obviously it proven. So they're certainly there on merit, and they deserve to be where they are. But yeah, I just don't see this going any other way. I think Borough will win this game comfortably and keep building that form. If it is, I don't think Hellberg will take this game. But, it'd be a positive sign for him to come out into a team with 2 wins on the spin, is second in the league. As I said, as a Swansea fan, do I blame him for going to a team second in the league? No, I don't. Fair enough, mate. Just wish he didn't lead us on.
Doesn't it?
wish he didn't do it the day you were supposed to sign with us. But fair Fair enough. Can't exactly blame you for doing that. Portsmouth versus Millwall. Obviously, another game involving a team in the playoffs with Millwall. Pompey again, struggling down the bottom. Ollie, again, I'm going to ask you what I just asked you with the last one. Is it as straightforward as it looks?
Yes. Portsmouth have not excited me this season. They've got one player in Murphy who, for me, is their standout player, and they just don't look like a team at the moment. It's nice to be able to have that outlet. And sorry, the other kid who banged the goals in against us, what's his name? Oh,
Very
I forget his name. Thank you. Got on the end of them balls, decent enough lacquer, but for me, Murphy's standout player for them. Can't do it all on his own. And Millwall at the Den, it's not nice, is it? It's not nice. Millwall will win.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up perfectly. Portsmouth on a terrible run of form. Millwall obviously not on the best last 3 games, but obviously sat 6th in the league. Can't complain all too much with that. Yeah, I mean, I believe it is actually in Portsmouth. So,
is it? Well, still Millwall, because the Fratton Park's not what it was.
Yeah, their home form hasn't translated from last year. They relied heavily on that to keep them in this league, and they're spiraling towards the bottom quickly because they can't recreate what they did last year. And I think they will come away with this one fairly easily. And finally, the one that Ollie's been waiting for the whole episode. I'm sure he's so excited to talk about this one. QPR versus Hull in London. Obviously, Hull 5th in the league. QPR falling right down to 16th, which I believe I did say I think that could happen after they played us. Because they haven't won a game since they played us. And I sort of saw it coming because they were terrible against us, to be fair. As I said, beating Swansea isn't difficult. So QPR, team in a bit of disarray, you on a very, decent run, you have to say, Ollie. Confident?
Yeah, I think so. Balumi looks like he could be back in as well. I don't know where we'd put Gelhardt. You can't drop Gelhardt. He's our form player. He's the guy who's put his hand up since McBurney's been injured. Apparently, McBurney's had another setback, believe it or not. So he's now looking at probably the Ipswich game on Tuesday night. I can't see how McBurney would come straight back in, given the front line's current run of form. Yeah, I am confident. I'll be honest with you. I think if we go down there and play our attacking style and really go at this QPR side, there's no reason why we can't go down there and come away with a win. QPR got a couple of decent players in there, but they're in a bit of a spell at the minute where they lost 3 of the last 4 games, and yeah, it could be a decent game for us to go down there and get a result and really sort of cement our playoff credentials, which sound bonkers to say that, but we are in 5th in the league, and we could well be, after the weekend is over, sat in 3rd. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I am confident.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would be as well. Obviously, you said with Gelhardt, he's been brilliant since the McBurney injury. Would you say McBurney maybe come in over Destan up front? Obviously, he's done well, but obviously with how good McBurney was, maybe that's the position where he drops back in. But for me, it's hard to change anything about this whole team. You wouldn't want to with how the results have been. And I really think that will continue. I was not impressed by QPR at all when they played us, and they've proven that since they beat us. They've lost 4 and drawn 1. So, I'm just not convinced, and I think this should be a relatively straightforward one for Hull. As again, not the easiest place to go, but I still think they'll be all right in this one, personally.
Yeah, it's an interesting one what you say about the front line, because I think if you look at it, and arguably we're missing our starting front 3, and obviously Miller's out, McBurney's out, and Balumi's been out. So I know that obviously you would put Miller straight back in for Joseph, you'd put McBurney in for Destan. Do you put Gelhardt back into the 10 role and then put Balumi on the right? But he's been so effective off the right. It's a nice little problem to have, considering that all these players have been out and we're pummeling away and we are 5th in the league. So long may it continue.
I was going to say, as I said, there's much worse problems to have than having too many good players. I'm sure Absolutely. That's definitely not an issue that...
I'm not complaining.
Juranovic is not going to be complaining either, I imagine, about having that problem. But that is all we have for you for our preview this week. So as always, we will be back finally after that week away on Monday or Tuesday for our review of this weekend's games. But thank you very much to Ollie for joining me as always, and we will see you all next week.